So, in order for you to work with the date, there is a JavaScript built-in date class. Just like in any other programming language, there is a built-in class. So for some of you, you may be noticing some syntax very similar to Java or C#, where you are going to be creating an object and you will be calling the constructor of the date class to retrieve the value. So in order for me to retrieve the current value, again, I will going to be declaring a variable. I can say today. So far it's a variable, but as soon as I code my right hand side, it will turn into an object. What is the main difference between a variable and an object? A variable can only be defined by a single value, and that's all it is. On the contrary, an object can have properties and behaviors. For example, when we take a look at something as complex as date, it is a single value, which is today's date, but on top of that, it is also a collection of behaviors where I can extract only the date, only the month, only the year. Or I can translate the entire date into the number of milliseconds so that I can do date arithmetic. Because anytime I do date arithmetic, which is the difference between the two dates, it needs to be done at a numeric level where both dates have to be translated into the milliseconds. Second thing that I can do, I can not only retrieve the system's date, but I can actually set to retrieve a date on a certain date in the past or in the future, which can be done different ways as well. So we're going to try a lot of those things in this one example. So anytime you see that keyword new, it pretty much refers to that you are about to create an object, followed by the name of the class. So now we are creating an object of date class. If you call the constructor of the date class, so what is a constructor? Anybody who is familiar with object-oriented programming will tell you that constructor is a special method which has the same name as the name of the class. No other method can have the same name as the name of the class. This method can only be called once, which is at the time of the creation of the objects. Can never be called again by the programmer. So that's one unique thing, because all other functions can be repeatedly called any number of times. But this guy can only be called once at the time of creation. What does it do? It simply sits there and initializes the properties of the class. So in our case, the date class has properties which are year, month, date, day of the week, hour, minute, second, millisecond. All of these things it initializes to whatever it needs to do. Like here in this case, when I call a default date constructor, which is the one that takes no parameter, it will always going to do what? Read the current system date and time. Date and time, both. If I want to put it to a certain date in the past or in the future, then instead of a blank date constructor, I call an overloaded date constructor. What is overloaded? Overloaded means there are more than one methods with the same name, but they have a difference of parameter set. So this one takes no parameter, the other one will take one parameter. But since their names are same, this concept is called overloaded methods or overloaded constructors. Yes, your question.
And I was just making a comment that we are telling today, last week, that we really don't want to extend anything.
Yeah, we don't have inheritance in JavaScript. Yes. So here, if I would like to say document.write, today is, and then I can say today, and then if I run it like this, it will going to give me this one long date. And if you notice, if you would have seen this code maybe 10, 15 years from today, like in the past, it never gave you all that information. Now it's giving you far more information because with time, even JavaScript is improving and it can format itself better. It can read far more data from the console, from the system. So it basically formats itself saying Friday, March 17, 2017. This is the time. This is the Greenwich Mean Time variation. And the daylight saving is on for central. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to declare another variable called today2. And instead of directly calling the date constructor, some Java developers also take this approach, where after they instantiate the date, they convert it into a string and they return a string which gets stored in the variable. In order to do that, they basically call a built-in function called toLocalDateString. Then what you can see that how locale string formats it. Let's look at another date class variation variable. I should say past date 1 equals to new date. And now we're going to use an overloaded date constructor. So we'll say I want to extract a date from 10 November 2011. And I will going to say this is past date number 1 is past date 1. And if you notice, the past date number 1, bless you, comes out. So if I copy these two lines that I've just coded and paste them right below, and I'm going to change this to past date 2, and the only variation I want to do is, instead of just directly storing the date, I want to now call upon toLocalDateString. Just so that, once again, you can see that variation between current date and time and the past date and time. And you can see that it does exactly the same thing, month, date, year. So I could set it up to a date in the past. I could set it up to the date in the future. Or I can set it up to the current date and time. So it's my choice. So for example, if I'm writing an application which will tell me how many days to July 4th. Now July 4th is in the future, so I can set up a future date. Then I can read the current date. So every time the user runs the application, I read the today's date, and then I take the differences between the two times, and I tell them, okay, in these many days you'll have July 4th.
Oh no.
Yeah, you gotta wait till summer for that.
I was wondering how long it would take you to do a pun. I think you're kind of getting a little sloppy there.
So, this is one other way that you can use this. Now let's look at a third variation. In the third variation, let me call this one past date 3. And this will going to be a new learning experience because in this case I'm not passing any strings. Rather, I'm passing two numbers like that. So, in my date class, besides the two that I've shown you two constructors so far, right? I've shown you an empty constructor, and I've shown you a constructor that receives a string, correct? So I've shown you two constructors. There are 6 more Okay, what are those 6? One only takes a year. One takes year and month, like the one I showed you. One takes year, comma, month, comma, date. One takes year, comma, month, comma, date, comma, hour. It's an hour, minute, second. You know, you have like 6 different variations. If you don't set hour, minute, second, it just sets it to midnight of that day. So here, I'm only passing what? Year and month. What do you think that month will going to be?
October.
It will going to be October? No. It will not going to be October.
It'll be one.
Oh, January?
January? No, it was going to be November.
What?
Because the first month is 0. Yeah, okay. So if you just pass a number, it starts at counting from 0. So December is 11.
Like an array.
Exactly, it's like an array. And then again, I will going to copy this. I'll copy this and paste it right below and change this to a date 4. And make this a locale date string. Just so that you can also see that output. And here you can see that it formats it nicely. So when you do not provide the day of the month or the date of the month, it automatically defaults to the first date of the month.